Just communicate sounds right, until you realize it's not actually fixing anything. Let's talk about why. You ever have a conversation where you explain yourself clearly, calmly, even carefully, and you can tell from their face that it landed? They got it. You felt it. And then 2 hours later, you find out what they actually heard. And it has almost nothing to do with what you said. Not because they weren't listening, because somewhere between your mouth and their understanding, something got translated, and the translation was wrong. So the standard advice is just communicate, be open, say what you mean, and you do. You're careful about your words. You explain your reasoning. You try to be direct without being harsh. And it still ends up sideways. More words, more clarity attempts, more, "That's not what I meant." And somehow you're further from understanding than when you started, which creates a specific kind of frustration. Not explosive, just, how are we still not on the same page? Here's the structural problem with communicate more. It assumes that communication produces shared understanding. It doesn't. Communication produces transmitted meaning. Whether that meaning arrives intact depends entirely on something you cannot control, the filter the other person is running when they receive it. And that filter is built from everything that came before this moment: their history, their expectations, their current emotional state, their existing narrative about you. They're not hearing your sentence. They're hearing your sentence plus everything their system adds to it, which creates a very specific loop. You say something neutral. They receive it through their filter. And what arrives on their end has a slightly different meaning than what you sent. They respond to that meaning. You hear their response and react to it. Now you're defending something you didn't say. They respond to your defense. And within 3 exchanges, you're in a conversation that has nothing to do with what was originally said. Both of you are being genuine. Both of you feel misunderstood. Both of you are convinced the other one isn't listening, because you're not having the same conversation. You're having 2 adjacent conversations that are being mistaken for one. That's why explain it better doesn't work. You can't explain your way through a filter. You can only account for it. And here's the specific trap with communicate more. More words into a misaligned interpretation gap don't narrow the gap. They widen it, because now there's more material being filtered, more opportunities for the translation to drift, more content for each person to respond to differently. The problem isn't the volume of communication. It's that both people are operating from the assumption that the meaning they're sending is the meaning being received, and it isn't. This isn't you failing at communication, and it isn't them being difficult. It's 2 people operating with different internal translation systems in real time without realizing it. And neither system is broken. They're just not calibrated to each other yet. The shift that actually changes something here isn't, how do I say this more clearly? It's a different question entirely. What is this likely to mean to them? Not as I intended it, but as they'll receive it. That's not a communication skill. That's a perception shift. Because the moment you stop optimizing for clarity and start accounting for how you're being received, you stop having 2 separate conversations and calling it one. Every time you communicate from reaction, you add to the noise. Every time you account for how it's landing, you reduce it. That's the difference between being clear and being understood.